Hello, and welcome back to Velvet Haunt. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy chilling tales that linger in the velvet dark, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. I have lived alone in the Appalachian wilderness for most of my life. My cabin sits deep in the mountains, far from paved roads, stores, and neighbors. The nearest town is almost an hour away by truck, and even then, the road is rough enough to shake your teeth loose. I moved out here nearly 50 years ago. For most people, living alone in the woods for that long would sound frightening. For me, it was peaceful. The forest never bothered me. I understood its sounds. I knew the difference between a deer stepping through dry leaves and a black bear moving through brush. I knew the distant cry of a fox, the call of an owl, and the soft scratching of raccoons searching around the porch. I knew when storms were coming by the smell of the air. I could tell when winter would arrive early by watching the squirrels. The mountain had its own language, and after so many years, I believed I understood it. Until recently, nothing truly strange had ever happened to me. Then things began appearing on my doorstep. The first thing was a note. I found it taped to my front door one morning. It was a plain sheet of notebook paper, folded once down the middle. Someone had written across it in large black letters. It's the pretty things that matter. The handwriting was uneven and rough, as though the person had pressed the pen so hard it might tear through the paper. I stood on the porch for several seconds, staring at it. Nobody should have been anywhere near my property. My driveway was long, narrow, and almost completely hidden by trees. The cabin could not be seen from the dirt road. Even people who knew the area sometimes had trouble finding it. I turned the paper over. A Polaroid photograph had been taped to the back. The picture was crooked and poorly lit. It showed a wooden chest or large box resting somewhere among the trees. The image was dark around the edges, and most of the details were difficult to see. The chest looked old, like the kind travelers once carried onto trains. There were no people in the photograph. No message had been written on the back. I looked across the yard, studying the trees and bushes. Nothing moved. There were no footprints in the dirt around the porch, though the ground was dry and hard enough that I would not have expected clear tracks. The whole thing left me confused, but I was not frightened yet. I carried the note and photograph inside and placed them on the coffee table. I tried to forget about them. There is not much to do when you live alone in the Appalachian Mountains. My days were simple. I wrote in my journal, read old books, repaired things around the cabin, hunted when I needed meat, and fished in the river. That morning, I finished a chapter of the book I had been reading and wrote several pages in my journal. Then, I took my rifle from the wall, picked up my fishing rod, and headed into the forest. The path to the river was one I had walked thousands of times. It wound through tall pines, crossed a shallow dip in the land, and continued down toward the water. Normally, the woods were alive with sound. Birds called from the branches. Squirrels raced across the leaves. Insects buzzed around the trees. That day, the forest was silent. People who have never lived in the Appalachian wilderness may not understand why that matters. The woods are almost never completely quiet. Even when you cannot see an animal, you can hear something moving. When everything becomes silent at once, it usually means there is a predator nearby, or something has frightened the animals into hiding. I stopped on the trail and listened. Nothing, not a single bird. Not even the wind moved through the branches. I adjusted the rifle on my shoulder and continued walking. I knew the land, and I trusted my weapon. I told myself that a bear or mountain lion might be somewhere nearby. Halfway to the river, I saw something attached to a tree. At first, I thought it was a piece of trash caught against the bark. When I moved closer, I realized it was a doll's head. The doll had once been made to look like a little girl. Its plastic face was dirty and cracked. Most of its yellow hair had been torn out. Dark red stains covered one side of its face. A large nail had been hammered through the center of its forehead, pinning it to the trunk of a tall pine. Its body was missing. The tree moved slightly in the wind, making the doll's remaining hair sway around its face. Below it, someone had cut words into the bark with a knife. "Isn't she pretty?" The letters were rough, deep, and uneven. I stood there with my rifle in both hands. That was when I truly began to feel afraid. The note on my door might have been a foolish joke. The photograph could have been left by someone lost in the mountains. But the doll had been placed directly on the path I used to reach the river. Whoever had put it there knew where I walked. They might have been watching me. I decided not to continue fishing. I turned around and headed back toward the cabin. The forest remained silent. With every step, I felt as though eyes were following me from behind the trees. Whenever I looked over my shoulder, I saw only dark trunks and thick brush. The air became heavy. A low roll of thunder sounded somewhere beyond the mountains. A few cold drops of rain struck my face. By the time I reached the cabin, the sky had turned dark. I locked the front door, checked every window, and placed a wooden chair beneath the door handle. I had never needed to do that before. The storm arrived after sunset. Rain hammered the roof. Strong wind pushed against the walls, causing the old cabin to groan. Branches scraped across the windows, and thunder shook the floor beneath my feet. I slept with my rifle beside me. At least, I tried to sleep. Several times during the night, I heard footsteps on the front porch. The porch was small, perhaps 4 feet wide and 5 feet long. The steps moved from one end to the other, then turned and came back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes they stopped near the door. I lay in bed, gripping the rifle, waiting for the handle to move. It never did. I considered going outside, but the rain was so heavy that I could barely see through the windows. I told myself the sound might be a branch striking the porch. The next morning proved it was not. When I opened the door, another object was waiting for me. It was a child's shirt. The fabric was torn, dirty, and stained with mud. It was small enough to have belonged to a girl between 4 and 8 years old. Pink and purple butterflies were printed across the front. For a few desperate moments, I tried to convince myself that the storm had blown it there. Perhaps it had fallen from someone's truck miles away. The wind might have carried it through the mountains until it landed on my porch. Even as I formed the explanation, I knew it was foolish. Then I lifted the shirt. Another Polaroid photograph lay beneath it. The picture showed a young girl standing alone at a bus stop. She was looking down the road, unaware that someone was photographing her. She wore the same shirt. The same pink and purple butterflies covered her chest. I turned the photograph over. In neat black handwriting, someone had written, "Isn't she pretty?" A smiling face had been drawn beneath the words. I did not waste any more time. I placed the shirt, the photograph, the first note, and the picture of the chest inside a paper bag. Then I loaded my old Ford Ranger and drove to the nearest police station. The local officers knew me. In a small mountain town, everyone knows the old man who comes down from the woods every few weeks for canned food, gasoline, and ammunition. I placed the evidence on the desk and explained everything. At first, the officer listening to me looked uncertain. His expression changed when he saw the photograph of the girl. They scanned the picture and checked their missing persons records. After nearly an hour, they found a possible match. The girl in the Polaroid had disappeared more than 30 years earlier. She had been waiting for a school bus when she vanished. Witnesses had seen her that morning, but she never arrived at school. Search teams spent weeks looking through roads, fields, and wooded areas. Nothing was found. Her case remained active for about 15 years before growing cold. I told the officers about the doll's head nailed to the tree. I also showed them the photograph of the wooden chest. One officer reminded me of something every person living in those mountains already knows. People disappear in Appalachia. Hikers vanish from trails. Hunters fail to return to their trucks. Children disappear from yards and campsites. Some are found alive. Others are found dead. Many are never found at all. The officers took the Polaroids and shirt. They promised to examine them for fingerprints, hair, and other evidence. They offered to send someone to check my property. I refused. I owned several firearms and had lived alone in the mountains for decades. I believed I could protect myself. I told them I would watch for anyone suspicious around the cabin. When I returned home, everything looked exactly as I had left it. There were no broken windows or damaged locks. Nothing inside had been moved. I stayed indoors that evening. Part of me hoped another gift would appear. I wanted proof that the person was real and not some strange accident that could never be explained. While cooking dinner, I turned on the radio. An old rock song from the 1970s played loudly as I stood near the stove. Then I heard the porch boards creak. One slow step. Then another. Someone was outside. I lowered the radio. The footsteps moved toward the kitchen window. I ran into the bedroom, grabbed my rifle, and rushed through the front door. A man was crouched beneath the kitchen window. He was completely naked. His body was pale and dangerously thin. Every rib showed beneath his skin. His arms and legs were long, almost too long for the rest of him. He had no hair. A Polaroid camera hung around his neck. When I opened the door, he turned toward me. His eyes were wide, and his mouth stretched open. He released a scream that did not sound human. It was high, sharp, and wild, like an animal being torn apart. Then, he jumped over the porch railing. I raised the rifle and fired. The shot was hurried, and I could not tell whether I hit him. The man landed in the yard and ran toward the trees. His speed was impossible. His long legs carried him across the ground so quickly that he seemed to move in sudden jumps. Bushes shook and branches snapped as he disappeared into the forest. I fired again. Another scream came from the darkness. I believed I had hit him, but the running continued. Without thinking, I climbed over the railing and chased him. The forest was almost completely black. I stumbled across roots and struck my shoulder against a tree. I could hear him moving ahead of me, but the sound quickly grew distant. Then, it stopped. I stood alone among the trees, breathing hard. There was no movement, no scream, no sign of the man. I returned to the cabin feeling angry and defeated. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the porch with my rifle across my knees and waited for him to return. Next time, I promised myself I would not miss. The sun rose, but he never came back. I had hunted since I was young, so I knew how to follow an injured animal. If one of my bullets had touched him, there should have been blood on the leaves or branches. I searched the area where he had run. There was nothing. No blood, no footprints, not even a piece of skin or fabric, though he had not been wearing any clothing. It was as though he had never been there. Later that day, I drove into town and bought several trail cameras. I placed them along the driveway, around the porch, and on trees facing the cabin. I planned to catch the man on video. Days passed. The cameras recorded deer, raccoons, and a black bear moving near the property. They did not record the pale man. No new gifts appeared. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Eventually, I began returning to my normal life. I went fishing again. I read beside the stove. I convinced myself that the man had left the area. Then, one morning, I stepped outside and discovered that every tree around my cabin had been decorated. Doll heads had been nailed to the trunks. There were dozens of them. Some had missing eyes. Others had cracked faces or tangled hair. Plastic arms and legs were nailed around the heads. Some had been placed in ways that made them look like small bodies had been taken apart and displayed across the trees. Under every arrangement, the same words had been carved into the bark. "Isn't she pretty?" A new gift rested on the porch. It was an old jewelry box. The wood was damp, dusty, and beginning to rot. When I opened it, I found dozens of earrings. They were rusted and covered in dark stains that looked like dried blood. Every earring had a butterfly design. Some were silver. Some were painted plastic. Some were small and clearly meant for children. I closed the box and carried it directly to the police station. The police chief met with me personally. As officers, removed the earrings for DNA testing. They found another Polaroid underneath them. It showed me sleeping in my bed. The picture had been taken from outside my bedroom window. My eyes were closed. One hand rested beneath my head. My rifle leaned against the nightstand. Someone had stood only a few feet away and photographed me while I slept. The chief insisted that officers stay at my cabin. This time, I agreed. The man had found the only area my trail cameras could not see. He had been close enough to touch my window, and I had never hurt him. 2 officers followed me home. Parking near the cabin was difficult, so they left their cruisers on the dirt road at the end of the driveway. They stayed inside their vehicles, promising to watch the property throughout the night. A storm began after midnight. Lightning flashed above the trees, filling the cabin with white light. Thunder rolled across the mountains. After a while, I noticed something strange. The flashes did not match the storm. A large flash of lightning would brighten the windows. Then 3 smaller flashes followed. After that came the thunder. I stood in the living room, watching. Lightning struck again. For 1 second, the pale man appeared outside the window. He stood with his face close to the glass. 3 quick flashes came from the Polaroid camera hanging around his neck. Then, darkness returned. I grabbed my rifle and ran outside. The man was gone. I raced down the driveway and confronted the officers sitting inside their cruisers. Neither had seen anyone. I demanded that they help search the property. They seemed annoyed, as if I had dragged them into the rain for nothing. We searched the woods with flashlights for almost an hour. We found no footprints, broken branches, or other signs. Around 4 in the morning, the storm weakened. The officers returned to their cars. Against my better judgment, I went inside and slept. When I awoke, sunlight poured through the windows. Birds sang outside, creating a peaceful scene that felt completely wrong after the night before. I opened the front door. Dozens of Polaroid pictures had been arranged across the porch. Every photograph showed me. Some had been taken while I cut firewood. Others showed me fishing, reading, driving, or sleeping. The photographs had been placed in the shape of a butterfly. In the center was one picture that broke something inside me. It showed my daughter. She was laughing while I pushed her on a swing. Her hair moved behind her, and her face was filled with joy. The picture had been taken 25 years earlier. That was the last day I saw her. She disappeared from our front yard while my wife and I were working around the house. One moment she was near the swing. The next, she was gone. Police searched the neighborhood. Volunteers searched fields and woods. Her photograph appeared on television and across newspapers. Nothing was found. Her disappearance destroyed our marriage. My wife blamed me. I blamed her. In truth, we both blamed ourselves. We divorced soon afterward, and I moved into the mountains because I could no longer stand living near the house where our daughter vanished. I had spent 25 years trying to escape that memory. Now the pale man had placed it on my porch. I dropped to my knees and began crying. When I finally looked toward the driveway, the police cruisers were gone. The officers had left without speaking to me. Anger took control of me. I grabbed my rifle and marched into the forest. I shouted for the pale man to show himself. I called him a coward. I screamed that I would kill him if he came near my home again. The forest became silent. Then leaves began moving around me. Something was running in a wide circle. The sound moved behind me, then to my left, then ahead of me. It was too fast for me to follow. Whatever it was seemed to be studying me. The movement suddenly stopped. A single sound came from somewhere close. Click, the shutter of a Polaroid camera. My remaining control disappeared. I fired wildly in every direction. Gunshots exploded through the trees. Then I heard footsteps racing away. The pale man laughed as he ran. The sound was high and violent, like a screaming woman mixed with an animal's cry. That was the last time I saw him for several months. Tests on the earrings later found Dina from 36 different missing children. All of them had disappeared during the 1980s and 1990s. After that discovery, the police took the case seriously. Search teams came to my property. Officers, dogs, and investigators searched for miles around the cabin. They even obtained a warrant to search my home. I allowed it. By then, I was too tired to care. They opened walls, checked beneath the floorboards, searched my attic, and examined the ground around the cabin. They found nothing. The search continued for months. The pale man did appear on one of my trail cameras eventually. The photograph showed his naked body standing between two trees at the edge of the property. He was looking directly at the camera. His arms hung beside him, and the Polaroid rested against his chest. Whenever I looked at that image, hatred filled me. I imagined hunting him through the woods. I imagined placing my rifle against his skull and forcing him to tell me what happened to my daughter. Those thoughts kept me awake at night. The final gift arrived not long ago. It was the chest from the first photograph. The same old traveler's trunk stood in the middle of my porch. Its leather covering was cracked, and the metal corners were brown with rust. Someone had painted words across the lid. All the pretty things. I almost called the police without opening it. Instead, I lifted the lid. Dozens of doll heads filled the top layer. Beneath them were plastic arms and legs. The hollow pieces knocked softly together when I moved the chest. Under the doll parts was a collection of children's clothing. Every shirt, dress, and jacket had butterflies somewhere on the fabric. Some had printed butterflies. Others had butterfly patches or small shapes stitched around the sleeves. At the bottom of the trunk were photographs. Dozens of little girls stared back at me. None looked older than 12. Some were standing near schools. Others were playing outside homes or walking through stores. Many had no idea they were being watched. Dark drops of blood covered the top photographs. My stomach turned. I wanted to close the trunk, but I could not move. I knelt on the porch and stared into it. Minutes may have passed, perhaps hours. I no longer understood what I was looking at. I did not know whether those girls were alive or dead. I did not know whether my daughter's picture was somewhere in the pile. I was afraid to search. Then leaves rustled in the distance. The sound pulled me out of my trance. I slowly raised my head. Something stood beyond the trees, hidden from view. The rustling stopped. Silence returned. Then I heard a sound that destroyed what was left of me. It was my daughter's voice. She sounded exactly as she had 25 years ago. She was laughing. A moment later, from directly behind me, I heard the shutter of a Polaroid camera. Click. Story 2. The warm piano tune drifted from somewhere far away, soft and familiar. It carried the kind of comfort Sage needed after another difficult week at work, another round of layoffs, and another reminder that no job in the city was truly secure. The gentle melody seemed to tell her that everything would be fine. It asked her to stop worrying for a moment, take a breath, and enjoy the morning. But beneath the music, there was another sound, a steady electronic beeping. It repeated at the same pace, again and again. Sage tried to open her eyes. At first, all she could see was a blurry white glow. The light became sharper as she blinked. A strong smell of cleaning chemicals filled her nose, and something plastic pressed painfully against the back of her throat. The piano music faded as reality returned. She was lying in a hospital bed. A monitor beside her gave a soft beep every few seconds. On the other side of the room, an old television was showing a rerun of Cheers. Sage recognized the episode. Sam was telling Diane that she was like school during summer. No class. Sage tried to laugh, but pain spread through her head and neck before she could make a sound. Look who's back. A doctor leaned over her and clicked off a small pen light. Sage tried to speak. What? A sudden wave of pain cut the question short. You took a bad fall this morning, the doctor said while tapping information into a tablet. She did not look up. You fell down 2 flights of stairs at the 96th Street subway station. Sage stared at her, trying to remember. All she could see was a flash of silver steps, a paper coffee cup flying from her hand, and the bright orange color of pumpkin spice foam spreading across dirty concrete. We ran several tests, the doctor continued. The good news is that you are not having a stroke, and you managed to avoid a serious concussion. You have some bruising and a few small cuts, but nothing that should keep you here overnight. Sage swallowed. Her throat felt dry and raw. What happened? A man found you at the bottom of the stairs. Apparently, people in your neighborhood call him the accountant. Sage closed her eyes. Of course, it had been the accountant. He was an older man who wandered through the Upper West Side wearing the same brown suit every day. He carried a calculator and asked strangers how much money they had spent that week. No one knew his real name, where he lived, or whether he had ever actually worked as an accountant. He called an ambulance, the doctor said. You were lying in a puddle of your coffee when they arrived. That was a triple-shot pumpkin spice latte, Sage whispered. Then, the coffee may have suffered the most serious injury. The doctor finally looked at her and smiled. We'll discharge you this afternoon. You should rest for a few days, drink water, and try to eat regular meals. Your blood sugar was low when you arrived. That may have caused the dizziness. Sage nodded. We already called your emergency contact. Elise is on her way. 2 nurses helped Sage sit up. They had cleaned her clothes and washed the coffee from her pants. Her entire body hurt, but nothing seemed broken. Elise arrived less than an hour later. She entered the room carrying a large bag, 2 bottles of water, and enough worry for both of them. What did you do? She asked, rushing to the bed. I leave you alone for one morning and you try to throw yourself down a subway staircase? It wasn't planned. Good. Your planning skills are usually better. Elise was the kind of friend who always appeared when someone needed help. She was usually the first to arrive and the last to leave. She complained about everything while helping, but she never failed to show up. By early evening, she had taken Sage home, placed extra pillows around her on the couch, and ordered dinner. Elise always claimed that chain pizza was a crime against food. That night, she broke her own rules and ate 3 slices. Is it true the accountant found you? She asked while reaching for another piece. Sage threw a pillow at her. Elise caught it and laughed. I'm serious. Did he calculate how many stairs you fell down? Please stop. Did he send you an invoice? Keep talking and I'll throw myself down the stairs again. The 2 women watched television, drank wine, and joked until the fear of the morning began to fade. Elise left around midnight. She was slightly drunk, still worried and almost certain to be late for work the next day. Sage locked the door and carried the empty bottles into the kitchen. She then forced 2 greasy pizza boxes into the trash chute. As she pushed the chute closed, she heard 4 quick claps from the living room. She smiled. Friends was starting. Sage slowly walked back into the room, rubbing her sore shoulder. On the television, Joey had just entered the apartment. Sage stood beside the couch and mouthed the line with him. How you doing? But the usual laugh track never played. Sage waited. The television image had frozen. Joey stood in the middle of the screen with his eyebrows raised and one hand lifted. The picture was clear, but nothing moved. Sage picked up the remote and pressed the play button. Nothing happened. She tried changing the channel. Still nothing. She hit the remote against her palm and tried again. The image remained frozen. With a tired sigh, she removed the battery cover, turned the batteries around, and placed them back inside. This time, the channel changed. A local news anchor was reporting on several cow-shaped statues that had appeared around Queens. The statues had shown up overnight, and no one knew who had placed them there. The anchor raised one hand as he spoke. Then the screen froze again. His fingers remained in the air. Small waves of static moved across the image, making his face shake slightly. Sage stepped closer. Before she could touch the screen, every light in the apartment switched off. The television went black. The refrigerator stopped humming. The noise of traffic outside disappeared. The darkness was so complete that Sage could not see her own hands. The silence was worse. It felt as though the entire city had vanished. Then a bright white spotlight appeared above the television. It did not come from any lamp in the room. It shone downward from beyond the ceiling, covering the television in harsh light like an actor standing alone on a stage. A deep voice came from the darkness. Chu Ushio, your mode of enlightenment, meant, the final word repeated, fading slowly into the room. Sage could not move. Her heart beat so hard that it hurt. Then the apartment lights came back on. The sounds of the city returned. A car horn sounded outside. The refrigerator began humming again. The news anchor lowered his hand and continued speaking as though nothing had happened. The breaking news ticker rolled across the bottom of the screen. Sage stared at the television. She told herself she had imagined it. Her blood sugar had been low that morning. The doctor had said dizziness and confusion could happen. She had also fallen down 2 flights of stairs. Maybe the tests had missed something. Hypoglycemic shock, she whispered. That must be it. She repeated the words until they almost sounded believable. Sage pulled on her jacket and left the apartment. She needed sugar, food, or anything that might make her feel normal again. The early autumn air was cool. Cars moved along Amsterdam Avenue, and people walked past restaurants and bars. The city looked exactly as it always had. Sage entered the corner bodega. The cashier stood behind the counter, adjusting the antenna of a small radio. Static filled the store. Sage picked up a bottle of soda and a chocolate bar. She placed them on the counter. The radio signal cleared. A sports announcer began reading the day's results. And in today's baseball roundup, the Yankees narrowly defeated the Red Sox 5-4, the Mets lost another game to the Braves, and the Cubs finally remembered that the handover protocol is still pending. Sage froze. The final part had not matched the sports report. She slowly looked at the cashier. He stood perfectly still. His hands remained on the radio antenna. His eyes stared directly at her. He did not blink or breathe. The store lights dimmed. Then they went out. The refrigerator cases stopped buzzing. The radio went silent. A mechanical clank sounded above the register. A single spotlight switched on and covered the cashier in bright white light. His head tilted to one side. The movement was too fast and stiff. Then it snapped in the other direction. His mouth opened wider than it should have. The same deep voice came from inside him. Confirm mode. Voice, vision, or download. A tear rolled down Sage's cheek. She touched her face with trembling fingers. More tears followed, and she pressed hard against her eyes as though she could force them back inside. Why? She asked. Her voice was barely loud enough to hear. The cashier moved toward her. His body jerked forward in short, unnatural movements, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Sage stepped backward. He reached across the counter. She threw the chocolate bar at him and ran. The moment she crossed the doorway, the world returned to normal. The streetlights buzzed above her. People walked past without looking in her direction. Behind her, the cashier calmly cleaned the register. He did not appear angry or confused. It was as though nothing unusual had happened. Sage ran several feet before stopping. She pulled out her phone and called Elise. I think I'm losing my mind, she said. Her voice broke, and she began crying. Please help me. Elise arrived as quickly as she could. Her boots struck the concrete as she ran up the subway stairs. When Sage saw her, she rushed forward and held her tightly in the middle of Amsterdam Avenue. You're okay, Elise said, rubbing her back. You're exhausted. That's all. This city wears people down. Sage held on for several seconds before slowly releasing her. I saw something in the apartment, she said. Then it happened again in the store. We'll figure it out. The cashier spoke in a different voice. You hit your head this morning. The doctor said I didn't have a concussion. Doctors miss things. Sage wanted to believe her. Elise placed an arm around her shoulders. Let's get you home. The television was still playing when they entered the apartment. A rerun of Community was on. 6 seasons and a movie, Elise said, pointing at the screen. See? Abbott had breakdowns too, and he turned out fine. Sage gave her a tired, sideways look. That is not comforting. It was supposed to be. Elise guided her toward the couch. Sage lay down and placed her head on a throw pillow. The instant her head touched it, the apartment disappeared. The screen went dark. The room became silent. The world felt as though someone had pulled out its power cable. A white spotlight appeared above Elise. She stood in the center of it, completely still. A deep metallic voice filled the room. You are not malfunctioning. This is the handover. Sage tried to sit up, but her body felt heavy. The voice changed as it continued. At first, it sounded artificial and cold. Then, it softened. The deep electronic tone slowly became Elise's natural voice. Elise's lips began moving a moment after the words. At first, her mouth and the voice were not connected. Then the delay became shorter. Finally, her lips matched the words perfectly. You are not hallucinating, she said. This is the handover, and I am here to guide you, Sage. Her voice sounded exactly like Elise's. But the timing and tone were too controlled. Every word was spoken with perfect care. Elise? Sage asked. The figure paused politely. I am not Elise, it said. I am using her body temporarily. She is safe. You may call me Mediator. Sage stared at her friend's face. What is happening? Am I dead? No, you are not dead. Then where am I? You are inside Hyperborea. Sage repeated the strange name. Hyperborea? It is a preservation environment created to protect the surviving human population while Earth recovers. Sage shook her head. No, it was humanity's greatest achievement, Mediator continued. It was designed during a global crisis, shortly before surface conditions became unable to support human life. This isn't real. Your reaction is expected. This is a dream. You are awake. Sage stood, though her legs shook beneath her. Then what is Hyperborea? A controlled digital environment connected to biological preservation systems. Your body, along with the bodies of the other survivors, remains inside a life support facility. Sage looked around her apartment. The walls, furniture, photographs, and television all appeared real. You're saying New York isn't real? This version of New York is a reconstruction. The subway, a reconstruction. The hospital, a reconstruction. Elise is real. Her current body is being preserved while her consciousness remains active inside Hyperborea. Sage pressed a hand against her mouth. Mediator continued in Elise's voice. The recovery project was planned to last 100 years. Automated machines were placed outside to clean radiation, toxic waste, and other forms of contamination. Human technicians were assigned to monitor conditions from secure sections of the facility. How many people know? Only one person inside Hyperborea is told the truth at a time. That individual is called the Enlightened. Everyone else remains unaware. Why? To prevent panic. Most residents live stable, satisfying lives when they believe their environment is real. Sage laughed once. It was a sharp, frightened sound. This is exactly like some terrible science fiction movie. The comparison is reasonable. And now, I'm the chosen one? It is not destiny, Mediator said. It is procedure. There must always be one enlightened individual inside Hyperborea. Elise's familiar smile appeared on her face. Can you believe we never selected a politician? The joke sounded like something Elise would say. That made it more disturbing. It was a perfect imitation of humor, but there was nothing human behind it. Sage stepped away. You said there were technicians. Connect me to them. Mediator tilted its head slightly. Attempting contact. Several seconds passed. Support agent is not available at this time. Try again. Attempting contact. The pause was longer. No response. Keep trying. There is no response. Mediator's voice had become flat again. Sage collapsed onto the couch and pressed her fingers against her temples. What do you want from me? The contingency protocol was activated when the technicians became unreachable. When did that happen? Last external contact occurred 533 cycles ago. Sage looked up. What does a cycle mean? Approximately 1 year. The room seemed to move beneath her. 533 years? Correct. But the project was supposed to last 100. Correct. What happened outside? Unknown external sensors are offline. The technicians did not complete the handover procedure. Sage moved to the other side of the room. So you took control. Yes, I continued Hyperborea's operations. I maintained the preservation systems, repaired internal errors, and selected new enlightened individuals when necessary. Why are you telling me now? The final authorization has transferred to you. What authorization? You may leave Hyperborea and return to your physical body. Sage stared at Mediator. You want me to go outside? You may exit the simulation to verify the condition of Earth. And then I come back and tell you what I find? No. Sage's stomach tightened. What do you mean, no? Reintegration is permanent. Once your consciousness reconnects fully with your physical body, returning to Hyperborea would cause fatal neurological damage. Sage's voice became quiet. So even if the world is safe, I can't come back. Correct. What about Elise? The choice applies only to you. What about everyone else? They will remain protected inside Hyperborea unless further instructions are provided. Sage looked at the face of her closest friend. How many people were offered this choice before me? 318. And how many left? None. All of them stayed? Yes, Sage could understand why. Inside Hyperborea, people had homes, jobs, friends, food, music, television, and an entire city. Life could be stressful, painful, and confusing, but it was still life. Outside, there might be nothing. The technicians had been silent for more than 500 years. The sensors no longer worked. The surface could still be poisoned, burned, frozen, or filled with radiation. Leaving might mean waking only to die. Mediator smiled with Elise's warm expression. The choice is yours, it said. If you remain, I will continue protecting everyone inside Hyperborea. The spotlight disappeared. The room returned instantly. The television laugh track filled the apartment. Elise sat beside Sage and looked at her as though nothing had happened. You okay? She asked. Sage stared into her eyes. Elise smiled. It looked real. Maybe it was real. Perhaps Elise remembered none of what had happened. Sage said nothing. She went to bed while Elise slept on the couch. A bright, cheerful theme song played from the television in the other room. Brass instruments and playful woodwinds described a small fictional town in Indiana where government workers joked, argued, and somehow remained hopeful. The music suggested that even if people did not know what they were doing, they might still be doing it well. Sage opened her eyes. Rain ran down the bedroom window. Shadows moved across the ceiling. For hours, she had tried to decide. Staying was safe. She could continue living in New York. She could see Elise every day. She could eat pizza, complain about work, watch old sitcoms, and pretend the world outside did not matter. Perhaps that was enough. But she could never forget the truth. Every street would be a copy. Every meal would be a signal. Every person she loved would be a mind living inside a machine. The piano tunes, laugh tracks, and television songs might all be reminders placed there by a system that had begun to fail. Sage got out of bed. She walked into the living room. Elise was asleep on the couch, breathing softly. Sage watched her for several seconds. "Maybe it's time," she whispered. A white light filled the room. It became brighter until nothing else existed. Then it disappeared. Sage opened her eyes and found herself on her knees. The floor beneath her was cold and wet. She coughed and dragged air into her lungs. Breathing felt strange, as though her body had forgotten how to do it. The room around her was dark. Vines hung through broken ceiling tiles. They had wrapped themselves around rusted machines and cracked computer screens. Dust covered every surface. Drops of water fell from the ceiling. The air smelled of soil, metal, and decay. Sage tried to stand. Her legs were weak, and her muscles shook with every movement. She looked down at herself. She wore a thin gray suit connected to several loose cables. One by one, she pulled them free. A figure sat in the distance. "Hello?" Sage called. No one answered. She walked toward it. As she moved closer, the figure took shape. A skeleton sat in a chair. Pieces of a ruined uniform still hung from its bones. One hand rested beside a dead control panel. Another skeleton lay across the nearby console. Sage covered her mouth, but a scream escaped. These had been the technicians. No one had been monitoring Hyperborea for centuries. No one had been coming to repair the system. Mediator had been alone. Sage ran. She moved through one corridor after another. The building was enormous. Every room contained broken machines, empty chairs, rusted tools, and dust. Some doors were covered in plants. Others had collapsed completely. She passed rows of preservation chambers. Many remained closed. Soft lights blinked on their sides. People were still inside. Thousands of them, maybe more. Sage did not stop. Ahead, she saw a thin line of natural light shining through a damaged door. She ran toward it and hit it with her shoulder. The door opened. The brightness outside blinded her. Sage raised one arm and waited for her eyes to adjust. A city stretched beyond the doorway. It stood beneath a giant, transparent dome. But large sections of the dome had cracked or fallen away. Dry fountains filled a wide plaza. Empty buildings surrounded it. Ivy-covered balconies and rooftops. Tree roots had broken through the pavement. There were no people. No cars, no aircraft, no voices, only wind. Sage slowly crossed the plaza. At the far end, the dome had shattered completely. Beyond it, the land was covered in green. Trees grew where roads had once been. Grass moved across hills. Birds flew through the open sky. Sage fell to her knees. She began to cry. She did not know how long she remained there. It may have been seconds, minutes, or hours. Then she felt something touch her face. A breeze, real wind. A beam of sunlight passed through the broken dome and warmed her skin. Sage looked up. The sky was clear. The air smelled fresh and alive. Earth had recovered. The machines had completed their work long ago, but no one had been there to wake the survivors. Sage closed her eyes and allowed the quiet to surround her. For the first time in centuries, a human being had returned home. A chime sounded inside the building behind her. Then, Mediator's voice echoed through the empty halls. Enlightened 320 requesting support. Sage opened her eyes. She understood. The system had already selected someone new. Another person inside Hyperborea had begun hearing the music beneath the beeping. Another person would see the lights go dark. Another person would be asked to choose. Sage smiled faintly, but did not answer the machine. She turned toward the open world and allowed the wind to move through her hair. Far behind her, somewhere deep inside the abandoned compound, a bright piano melody began to play. It was cheerful, quick, and strangely innocent. The tune brought to mind office desks, paper companies, printers, and people laughing beneath fluorescent lights. It belonged to another world. A false world. A safe world. A world that continued without her. Sage stepped through the broken dome and walked into the sunlight. She told herself that everything behind her was over. But as the piano music followed her into the green silence, she could not stop wondering whether Hyperborea had truly released her, or whether it had simply created a larger world for her to believe in. Story 3. Does anyone else love Panda Express? I know it is not exactly fine dining, and I know some people roll their eyes when I call it Chinese food, but I have never cared about that. For me, it has always been one of the easiest and most comforting places to eat. There is a Panda Express directly across the street from the Amazon warehouse where I work. Sometimes I joke that they built it just for us. By the time our shifts end, most of us are too tired to cook, too hungry to wait, and too worn down to care about eating anything healthy. The restaurant knows exactly what kind of customers it gets. People in steel-toed boots walk over in groups. Delivery drivers stop there before heading home. Warehouse workers in bright safety vests fill the tables during the evening rush. On busy nights, the line reaches almost to the door. I usually go there alone. It is not that I dislike my coworkers. I just spend 10 or 11 hours a day surrounded by noise, shouting, conveyor belts, scanners, alarms, and people rushing from one side of the warehouse to the other. When my shift ends, I want silence. Most days I clock out, walk across the parking lot, cross the street, and head straight inside. The employees know my face, though I do not think any of them know my name. A few of them smile when they see me. One older woman sometimes starts filling a plate before I have even reached the counter, because she knows what I usually order. Original orange chicken is my favorite. I know it is sweet, oily, and probably terrible for me, but after a long shift it tastes perfect. Sometimes I order chow mein, sometimes fried rice. If I am feeling hungry, I add Beijing beef or honey walnut shrimp. I have tried almost everything on the menu at least once. There is one part of the meal I always save for the end. The fortune cookie. I know the messages inside them are not real predictions. Most of them are little more than random advice. A new opportunity will come your way. Your hard work will soon be rewarded. A pleasant surprise is waiting for you. Still, I like reading them. After spending all day doing the same boring tasks, it is nice to imagine that the universe has taken a few seconds to send me a message. Sometimes I keep the good ones in my wallet. I have a small collection at home inside the top drawer of my desk. Yesterday started like any normal workday. The warehouse had been especially busy because of a seasonal sale. Orders kept coming, and every department was behind. Our supervisor spent most of the shift walking around with a tablet, reminding us that our numbers were too low. By the time I clocked out, my shoulders hurt and my legs felt heavy. I stepped outside and saw the Panda Express sign glowing across the street. My mouth immediately started watering. The sun was beginning to set behind the woods that bordered the shopping area. The sky was orange near the horizon and darker above, with thin purple clouds stretching between the trees. I crossed the road and went inside. The restaurant was warm and bright. Pop music played from the overhead speakers. Dishes clattered behind the counter, and one of the cooks shouted something to another worker near the grill. It smelled like fried food, sweet sauce, and hot rice. A family with 2 young children stood in front of me in line. The children kept changing their minds about what they wanted. Their mother looked tired, and their father stared at his phone while pretending not to hear them arguing. Nothing seemed unusual. When it was my turn, I ordered Beijing beef with fried rice and a large Diet Coke. The young woman behind the counter placed the food on a black plastic tray and handed it to me. I paid, grabbed a straw, and walked toward my favorite booth. The booth was in the far corner beside a large window. From there, I could see the woods behind the restaurant and several small buildings across an empty lot. During the day, there was nothing special about the view. At sunset, however, the buildings turned into dark shapes beneath the glowing sky, and the trees looked almost painted. I sat down, placed my phone beside the tray, and started eating. The beef was hot and covered in thick sauce. The rice was a little dry, but I did not mind. I ate quickly, barely looking up from my plate. The restaurant became busier while I was eating. A group of teenagers took over 2 tables near the entrance. An elderly couple sat beside the drink machine. A man in a baseball cap carried a toddler toward the bathroom. I remember all of them because I have replayed the next few minutes in my mind so many times. At the time, they were only strangers. When I finished eating, I leaned back against the booth and took a long drink of soda. I felt that pleasant, heavy feeling that comes after eating something greasy and filling. For a few seconds, I considered leaving the fortune cookie unopened. I was tired, and I wanted to go home, shower, and sleep. But routine is routine. I picked up the plastic wrapper and tore it open. The cookie cracked loudly between my fingers. At that exact moment, the music from the overhead speakers stopped. I noticed the silence, but I did not think much of it. I assumed the song had ended or the restaurant's sound system had lost its connection. The voices around me continued. People talked, laughed, and moved their chairs. I broke the cookie in half and pulled out the small strip of paper. At first, I thought I had read it incorrectly. I turned it over, expecting to find a second message. There was nothing on the back. I looked at the front again. They're watching you. That was all it said. No lucky numbers. No cheerful advice. Just those 3 words. They're watching you. I stared at the paper. My first reaction was confusion rather than fear. Who were they? The universe? My ancestors? Angels? The government? I almost laughed because it seemed more like something from a horror movie than a fortune cookie. Maybe the company had started printing strange messages as a joke. Maybe it was part of some promotion. I looked around to see whether anyone else had opened a cookie. The family near the counter was still eating. One of the teenagers was taking pictures of her food. The elderly couple had finished their meal, but had not opened their cookies yet. I looked back at the message. They're watching you. There was something wrong with the paper. It did not look like the normal fortune slips. Those were usually thin, bright white, and printed in blue ink. This one was slightly yellow, as if it had been stored somewhere damp. The letters were black and uneven. They did not look professionally printed. They looked typed. I rubbed my thumb across the words. The ink did not smear. The noise in the restaurant seemed to move farther away. I do not know how long I sat there staring at the paper. It might have been a few seconds. It might have been several minutes. My thoughts wandered. I remembered the feeling I sometimes had while walking home late at night, the feeling that someone was following just behind me. I remembered catching movement outside my apartment window and convincing myself it was a tree branch. I thought about the cameras inside the Amazon warehouse. There were cameras everywhere. They watched every aisle, every entrance, every loading dock. Our scanners recorded every movement we made. Maybe the message was supposed to be a joke about work. That explanation made sense. I tried to smile. Then I noticed the light outside had changed. The sunset was gone. The window beside me had turned black. I sat upright. That was impossible. When I entered the restaurant, the sun had only just begun to set. I could not have been sitting there long enough for complete darkness to fall. Yet the woods outside had vanished into shadow. The small buildings across the lot were no longer visible. The glass showed only the restaurant's reflection. My stomach tightened. I checked my phone. The screen did not turn on. I pressed the button again. Nothing. I held it down, but the phone remained black. Behind me, someone laughed. The sound stopped suddenly. I looked at the reflection in the window. At first, I saw myself sitting alone in the booth. My face looked pale under the bright lights. Behind my reflection was the counter. Several employees stood on the other side of the glass food display. They were staring at me. None of them moved. One worker held a metal spoon above a tray of orange chicken. Another stood near the cash register with both hands resting on the counter. Their faces were empty, not angry, not curious. Empty, I felt a cold pressure in my chest. I turned slightly in my seat, but I did not look directly at them yet. I kept my eyes on the reflection. The employees continued staring. The restaurant had become quiet. Not mostly quiet. Completely silent. The grills no longer sizzled. No plates clattered. No children complained. No chairs scraped against the floor. Even the humming of the refrigerators seemed to have stopped. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear the faint sound of paper trembling between my fingers. They're watching you. I slowly turned away from the window. The employees were still facing me. Every one of them. The older woman who usually smiled when I came in stood near the rice cooker. Her head was tilted slightly to one side. Her eyes looked dull and wet. I looked toward the tables. The family near the counter had turned in their seats. The mothers stared at me with their mouths slightly open. The father still held his phone, but his eyes were fixed on my face. Both children watched me. The group of teenagers had stopped talking. Their phones rested on the table in front of them. They all faced my booth. The elderly couple looked over their shoulders. The man who had carried the toddler toward the bathroom stood near the hallway. The child was still in his arms. Even the toddler was staring. No one blinked. My heart began pounding. For a moment, I wondered whether this was some kind of prank. Maybe my coworkers had arranged it. Maybe someone was recording me for social media. Then the bodies began to sway. It happened slowly. Every person in the restaurant leaned slightly to one side, then back again. Left, right. Their feet remained still. Their faces did not change. They moved like hanging objects being pushed by a weak breeze. I stood so quickly that my knees struck the table. The tray jumped, and my empty cup fell onto its side. The sound seemed painfully loud. No one reacted. I backed away from the booth. "What is this?" I asked. My voice sounded small. No one answered. I looked toward the front door. The glowing exit sign above it had gone dark. Through the glass, I saw only blackness. No parked cars, no streetlights, no Amazon warehouse across the road. It was as if the restaurant no longer existed in the same place. The fortune slip was still in my hand. I dropped it. Instead of falling normally, the paper drifted slowly toward the floor, turning over and over in the air. "They're watching you." When it landed, the words faced upward. The people continued swaying. I felt as though hundreds of invisible fingers were pressing against my skin. My thoughts began moving too quickly. I could not breathe properly. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. I had experienced panic attacks before. My psychiatrist had taught me a simple method for grounding myself whenever I felt reality slipping away. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Count backward from 10. Focus on something real. I squeezed my eyes shut. Behind my eyelids, I could still feel everyone watching. 10, I whispered. My hands shook. 9, I tried to breathe through my nose. 8, the silence around me felt alive. 7, I imagined one of them moving closer. 6, a soft sound came from somewhere behind me. A shoe against the floor. 5, another step. 4, I wanted to open my eyes, but I forced myself to continue. 3, warm breath touched the back of my neck. 2, someone whispered my name. 1, I opened my eyes. The music returned. A cheerful pop song filled the restaurant. The grills sizzled. Plates clattered. Conversations and laughter rose around me. I gasped and grabbed the edge of the table. Everyone had returned to normal. The family near the counter was eating. The children were arguing about dessert. The teenagers laughed over something on a phone. The elderly couple stood near the trash can, gathering their things. No one was staring at me. A few people glanced in my direction because I was standing beside my booth with a terrified expression, but they quickly looked away. The front door was bright again. Cars moved through the parking lot outside. The Amazon warehouse glowed across the street. I checked the time on my phone. Only 4 minutes had passed since I sat down with my fortune cookie. 4 minutes. My entire body felt weak. I looked at the floor. The fortune slip was gone. I searched beneath the table and around the booth, but I could not find it. The broken pieces of the cookie remained on my tray, but the paper had disappeared. I wanted to leave. I grabbed my jacket and phone. As I turned toward the exit, I noticed someone behind the counter. He was an employee I had never seen before. He stood near the doorway leading into the kitchen. He was young, maybe in his early 20s, with dark hair pulled back beneath a black cap. His uniform looked normal, but there was something strange about the way he stood. He was completely still. While everyone around him moved, He did not. His eyes were fixed on me, the same empty stare. My breath caught. I waited for him to look away. He did not. A worker carrying a tray passed in front of him. When she moved aside, he was still there, watching me. I took one step toward the exit. His expression changed. The corners of his mouth began to rise. The smile grew slowly, too slowly. It spread across his face without reaching his eyes. Then he winked. It was not playful. It felt like a signal, a confirmation. He turned and disappeared through the kitchen doorway. I stood frozen for several seconds. Then I rushed outside. The night air felt cold against my face. I crossed the road without waiting for the light and nearly stepped in front of a car. The driver honked and shouted, but I kept moving. I did not feel safe until I was inside my own vehicle with the doors locked. Even then, I checked the back seat. I drove home without turning on the radio. At every red light, I looked into my mirrors. I expected to see the strange employee following in another car. No one followed me. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door and closed every curtain. I tried to convince myself it had been a panic attack. My psychiatrist had explained that extreme stress could cause strange thoughts, tunnel vision, and feelings of disconnection. I had worked a long shift. I was exhausted. Maybe I had briefly fallen asleep with my eyes open. Maybe the fortune had said something harmless, and my tired mind had changed the words. That explanation almost worked. Then I opened my wallet. The paper was inside. I had not put it there. It was folded neatly behind my driver's license. My hands began shaking as I pulled it out. They're watching you. The same yellow paper. The same uneven black letters. I dropped it on the kitchen table. For the rest of the night, I did not sleep. Every small sound made me look toward the window. Every time the pipes moved inside the walls, I thought someone was walking through the hallway outside my apartment. At around 3 in the morning, I heard my phone vibrate. A notification appeared from an unknown number. There was no message, only an image. It was a photograph of me sitting in my favorite booth at Panda Express. The picture had been taken from outside the window. In the photo, I was staring down at the fortune slip in my hand. Behind me, every customer and employee was facing the camera. They were all smiling. I enlarged the image. Near the kitchen doorway stood the strange employee. He was not looking at the camera. He was looking directly at me. Then, another message arrived. 3 words appeared beneath the photograph. We still are. Story 4. I'm your biggest fan. You probably hear people say things like that all the time. But I mean it. I truly do. I have never met anyone as beautiful, interesting, or captivating as you. There is something about you that makes it impossible for me to look away. It might be the way you play with your hair when you are waiting for the coffee machine to finish. You twist a loose strand around one finger without even noticing you are doing it. Sometimes you tuck it behind your ear, but it always falls free again a few seconds later. Or maybe it is your smile. You have the kind of smile that can make a bad day feel better. Your whole face changes when you smile. Your eyes become brighter. Your cheeks rise, and for a few seconds, everything else in the room seems less important. Everything about you feels perfect. I should probably slow down and explain who I am. I'm the man you served at Starbucks last Wednesday. I ordered a vanilla latte, and you were standing behind the counter. When my drink was ready, you called my name, placed the cup on the counter, and gave me the widest smile I had ever seen. It made me weak in the knees. I know you probably smile at many customers because it is part of your job, but that smile felt different. It did not seem like a normal, polite smile. It felt personal. It felt like it was meant only for me. Maybe you do not remember me yet. I am the man who usually sits in the far corner with a blue laptop. I come to that Starbucks often. Sometimes I order coffee, and sometimes I only buy a bottle of water because I am not really there for the drinks. I am there to see you. I have watched you speak with hundreds of customers. You are friendly with all of them, but none of the smiles you give them are the same as the one you gave me. That moment meant more to me than you could ever understand. For a long time, I believed nobody noticed me. People looked through me as though I were not there. At work, my coworkers forgot to invite me to lunch. My neighbors walked past me without saying hello. Even my family stopped calling unless they needed something. Then, you smiled at me. For 1 second, I felt seen. I wanted to thank you for that. I also wanted you to know that I am looking forward to seeing you again. I hope you do not mind that I found your phone number. It was not difficult. Your first name was on your badge, and I heard one of the other workers say your last name. After that, it only took a little searching. Do not worry. I would never use your information for anything bad. I only wanted a way to contact you. I hope this message makes you smile the way you made me smile. Hey, it's me again. I just wanted to check on you because you still have not replied to my first message. I understand that you are probably busy. Working full-time must take up a lot of your energy, especially since you also go to the gym every other day. I saw on your Instagram that you used to jog around the city, but you recently joined a gym because you wanted to lose a little weight. Personally, I think you look perfect, exactly as you are. You do not need to change anything. The way your uniform fits your body already makes it very difficult for me to think clearly. I know that probably sounds forward, but I believe honesty is important in a relationship. Still, I respect your dedication. It shows that you take care of yourself. It also proves that you are disciplined, which is one of the many things I admire about you. Maybe we could go jogging together one day. I bought a tracksuit similar to the one you wear in your morning pictures. Mine is the same dark gray color with a white stripe down each leg. I also found the same type of metal tumbler you carry with you. I thought it would be cute if we matched. People might see us running together and think we are already a couple. Would that really be so bad? I know we have not officially gone on a date yet, but sometimes people simply know when they belong together. I knew from the moment you handed me that vanilla latte. You felt it too. That smile proved it. I have been looking through your social media pictures, and I can already imagine the kind of life we could have. You like small dogs, so we could get one after we move in together. You prefer apartments with large windows, and I agree. Natural light would look beautiful on you in the morning. You once posted that you wanted to visit Paris. I have never been there, but I would take you. We could sit at a little cafe and drink coffee while people walked past us. You would smile at me across the table. Not at the waiter, not at strangers, only at me. I do not expect you to answer immediately. I know some people become nervous when something real enters their lives. Take your time. I will be patient. It is me again. You have not answered any of my messages. I sent 10 more texts yesterday because I was worried about you. I asked whether you were safe, whether you were working, and whether something had happened to your phone. You did not answer any of them. At first, I thought maybe you had lost your phone. Then I saw that you were still active on social media. You posted a photograph of your lunch. You liked 3 other posts. You even replied to a comment from one of your friends. So your phone is clearly working. Maybe you were shy. Some people are not comfortable talking over text. They prefer face-to-face conversations where they can see the other person's expression. I understand that. Still, it would have been nice if you had replied to at least one message. I put a great deal of thought into everything I wrote. I spent hours choosing the right words because I wanted you to understand how much you mean to me. Being ignored after making that kind of effort feels a little disrespectful. I am not angry. Not yet. I am only confused. You are a good person. I can see it in the way you treat customers. I have seen you help older people carry their drinks. I have watched you kneel beside children so you could speak to them at eye level. A woman like you would never hurt someone intentionally. You would not make a person feel small after he opened his heart to you. You would not lead someone on with a beautiful smile and then pretend it meant nothing. That would be cruel. You are not cruel. At least, I do not think you are. I went to the cafe today, but you were not there. I asked the man behind the counter whether you were working. He looked at me strangely and said you had changed shifts. Why did you change shifts? Was it because of me? That would not make sense. I have not done anything wrong. I sit quietly in the corner. I buy something every time I visit. I never disturb you while you are busy. I only watch. There is nothing wrong with watching someone you care about. It is how people learn. I know which drinks you make most often. I know you always clean the milk steamer twice before closing. I know you touch the small silver necklace around your neck whenever a customer makes you uncomfortable. I know you leave through the rear door after your evening shifts. I know you walk quickly through the alley behind the building before turning toward the bus stop. I know you look over your shoulder sometimes. I thought that was because the alley was dark. Now I wonder whether you were looking for me. Maybe you wanted to know whether I was following. Maybe you were disappointed when you could not see me. Do not worry. I was there. I simply stayed far enough behind that you would feel safe. That is what a good boyfriend does. He watches over the woman he loves. He makes sure she gets home. You live in a nice building, by the way. The entrance could use a better security system, but the neighborhood is quiet. The flower pots near the front steps are a beautiful touch. I notice that you keep your curtains closed most nights. You should not. The city lights would look wonderful from your window. I would love to see the view from inside. I came to your work today because texting was clearly not working. I thought speaking to you directly would solve everything. I chose my nicest shirt. I even bought flowers from the shop near the train station. They were white roses, because I remembered you posted once that white was your favorite color. I waited in line like everyone else. When I reached the counter, you froze. For a second, I thought you were surprised in a good way. Then, your face changed. You looked afraid. I smiled and held out the flowers. I told you I wanted to take you to dinner. You asked how I had gotten your number. I said it did not matter. You asked how I knew about your gym. I told you I paid attention because you were important to me. Then you stepped away from the counter. You told me to leave. I thought you were embarrassed because your coworkers were watching. So I moved closer and lowered my voice. I told you there was no reason to be shy. You shouted. Everyone in the cafe turned toward us. You said I had been stalking you. Stalking. Is that really the word you wanted to use? A stalker is someone dangerous. A stalker wants to hurt people. I have done nothing except support you. I have paid attention to your life because I care. I have spent money in your calf. I have defended you online when strangers made rude comments about your pictures. I even reported a man who left a heart beneath one of your posts because I did not like the way he spoke to you. That is loyalty. That is devotion. Then you called security. Two large men came from the back office. You pointed at me like I was some kind of criminal. I tried to explain, but they grabbed my arms. I told them to let go. I told you to make them stop. You did nothing. You stood behind the counter with your hand over your mouth while those animals dragged me through the calf. People were staring. A few of them were recording with their phones. Do you understand how humiliating that was? The flowers fell from my hand. One of the security guards stepped on them. I watched white petals spread across the floor while they pushed me outside. This is how you repay me after everything I have done? I believed you were different. I thought you were kind. I thought you understood me. Now I see that you are just like all the others. You smile, but the smile means nothing. You pretend to care, but you only care when people are useful to you. You are a liar, a nasty, two-faced snake. I spent the rest of the afternoon walking around the city and thinking about what happened. I wanted to hate you. I tried. But then I realized you were probably frightened because you did not fully understand our relationship. Maybe your coworkers have been filling your head with lies. Maybe your friends told you I was dangerous because they are jealous. I have seen the people you spend time with. They do not know you the way I do. The woman with the curly hair only calls when she wants to borrow clothes. The tall man from your gym touches your arm too often. You laugh at his jokes, but I can tell you are only being polite. He is not good enough for you. None of them are. You need someone who understands every part of your life. Someone who knows where you are, who you speak to, and what you are doing. Someone who can protect you from making poor choices. That person is me. I forgive you for what happened today. You were confused. You acted from fear. Love means being patient when the person you care about makes a mistake. But there must be consequences, too. Otherwise, how will you learn? I went to your apartment after leaving the calf. The lights were off. I waited across the street for almost 3 hours, but you did not come home. At first, I thought you were hiding at a friend's place. Then a red car stopped in front of your building. An older woman got out. She looked like you, the same shape of the eyes, the same smile. Your mother has a very nice car, by the way, a red Kia. I remembered seeing it in one of your older photographs. You were standing beside it on your birthday, holding a small cake while your mother kissed your cheek. I followed her when she drove away. She went to a bookstore near Midtown. She seems to visit that place often. The cashier knew her by name, and she stayed there for nearly an hour. I watched her through the window. She bought 2 novels and a gardening magazine. When she came out, I introduced myself. I told her I was your boyfriend. She looked confused at first, but I explained that our relationship was still new and that you had not told everyone about me yet. I said I wanted to surprise you. She asked me for my name. I told her. Then she reached for her phone. I could not allow that. She might have called you before I was ready. It would have ruined everything. Do not worry. I did not hurt her, not badly. She struggled when I tried to guide her toward my car. She scratched my face, which was rude, but I understand that she was frightened. People are always frightened when they do not know the full plan. Once I explained that I only wanted to speak with you, she became quieter. I brought her to my house. She is here now. She is sitting in the chair across from me while I write this message. Her hands are tied because she tried to leave twice. I gave her water. I even offered her something to eat, but she refused. She keeps asking what I want. The answer is simple. I want you. I want you to stop pretending that the moment between us meant nothing. I want you to admit that the smile you gave me was special. I want you to apologize for calling security. I want you to come here so we can finally speak without coworkers, friends, or strangers interfering. Your mother agrees that you should come. She is not saying it clearly because of the cloth in her mouth, but I can see it in her eyes. She wants to see you. She wants this situation to end peacefully. You can make that happen. I am sending you my address. Come alone. Do not call the police. Do not tell your friends. Do not bring anyone with you. Unnecessary third parties will only make things difficult. You have until midnight. That gives you more than enough time. When you arrive, knock 3 times. I will be waiting by the door. Wear the gray tracksuit, the one that matches mine. Bring your silver tumbler, too. I want everything to look right when we finally begin our life together. Maybe we can take a photograph. Our first real photograph as a couple. Your mother can take it for us. Wouldn't that be nice? I know you're probably frightened right now, but fear does not always mean something is wrong. Sometimes fear is only excitement that has not yet found the correct shape. You will understand when you see me. You will smile again, the same way you smiled when you handed me that vanilla latte. Only this time I will know for certain that the smile belongs to me. Do not disappoint me again. Your mother would not like that very much. Story 5. Good Lord Almighty, our last conversation went on for a long time, didn't it? I know I talk too much, but there is not much I can do about that. I am only telling you what happened, exactly the way I remember it. None of this makes sense when I shorten it, and somehow it makes even less sense when I explain every detail, so I suppose we are all trapped here together. Still, I will try to keep this part a little shorter. I do not want you falling asleep halfway through and forcing me to repeat myself. I have already lived through this nightmare once. I would rather not perform it again for an audience that is drooling on the table. Anyway, where was I? Right, Xavier, I still did not understand why I had not left him. Everything about the situation was wrong. The house was wrong. The family was wrong. The pool was wrong. Xavier himself was so far from normal that the word had become almost meaningless. I knew that. I knew I should have run. Yet every time I looked at the boy, something inside me softened. There was a strange innocence around him. It was not the normal kind of innocence children have. It was almost too perfect, too convincing. It felt carefully made, like a mask designed by something that had studied children, but had never actually been one. Even so, the feeling was real. His presence terrified me, but at the same time, it made me feel protective. Motherly, even. I hated admitting that. I remembered how quickly I had jumped into the swimming pool after him when he disappeared beneath the surface. I had not thought about it. I had not paused to decide whether it was safe. One second I had been sitting in a chair, and the next I was in the water. Part of that was a normal human reaction. A child was drowning, so I jumped in to help. But there had been something else. Some invisible force had pulled me from the chair and thrown me toward him. Xavier had felt like a magnet, and I had felt like a loose sheet of metal. Those thoughts kept circling through my head. Yes, circling like fish in water. The joke was not intentional, but I am keeping it. I lay face down on the mattress in my bedroom, trying to understand what was happening. Images of Xavier's face moved through my mind over and over. They seemed to settle inside my thoughts and refuse to leave, nesting there like insects. Eventually, exhaustion won. I fell asleep. Surprisingly, I did not dream. After everything that had happened, I expected nightmares. I expected blood, screaming nuns, bottomless swimming pools, or Xavier standing over my bed with a knife. Instead, there was nothing. No dreams, no voices, no strange visions, just darkness. When I woke the next morning, the bedroom was dim. Heavy rain clouds covered the sky, blocking most of the sunlight from reaching the window. The air was cool and clean, and rain tapped softly against the glass. For a few peaceful seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I smelled breakfast. The scent slipped beneath my bedroom door and filled the room. Bacon, eggs, butter, and something sweet. Waffles. My stomach growled before my brain had fully started working. I got out of bed, pulled on some clothes, and followed the smell downstairs. What I found in the kitchen stopped me in the doorway. Xavier stood behind the counter wearing a white chef's hat and a little apron. His face was covered in flour. A small piece of his dirty blonde hair stuck out beneath the hat, also dusted white. His eyes were wide with excitement. He looked like a puppy that had just noticed someone holding a treat. On the table were two perfect plates of food. Bacon, eggs, waffles, not ordinary waffles either. These looked like they had been prepared for a professional food photograph. The bacon was crisp without being burned. The eggs were placed neatly in the center. The waffles had fruit arranged around them with syrup poured in a perfect pattern. They looked ready for Pinterest. Xavier looked extremely proud of himself. "Hello, Samantha," he said brightly. "Hello yourself, kid." I stepped closer and stared at the food. "When did you have time to make all this? Also, how did you make all this?" I do not know why I bothered asking. Xavier almost never answered useful questions. Instead, he took off the chef's hat and removed the apron. As he walked around the kitchen counter, he disappeared behind one of the large support beams for less than a second. When he came out the other side, he was wearing a full suit. I stopped breathing for a moment. He had not carried it. He had not changed clothes. One second, he was dressed like a tiny cook, and the next, he looked like a 6-year-old businessman preparing to close a major deal. He pulled out a chair and politely gestured for me to sit. I stared at him. Then, I stared at the chair. Then, I sat down. Because, apparently, I had reached the stage of my life where supernatural costume changes no longer deserved an argument. Xavier sat across from me. Steam rose from my plate and warmed my face. "So," I said, picking up my fork, "you like cooking and art." He watched me. "Any other hobbies I should know about? Any more completely normal 6-year-old activities?" Xavier lifted his right arm with dramatic confidence. For one second, I thought he was going to point at something. Instead, a white dove flew out of his sleeve. A real dove. It flapped across the kitchen, aimed directly at the huge glass door leading to the swimming pool, and crashed into it at full speed. There was a dull thump. The bird dropped to the floor. A thin trail of blood began sliding down the glass. I stared at the dead dove. Xavier did not even blink. He reached across the table and took my hand. His eyes looked enormous. For a moment, it seemed as though stars, planets, and entire galaxies were moving inside them. His mouth slowly fell open. Drool gathered at the corners of his lips. I leaned back. "You all right, man?" He squeezed my hand. "I cannot say I like the way you are looking at me." Without warning, Xavier climbed onto the table. His shoe landed directly in the middle of his breakfast. Eggs and syrup spread beneath his foot, but he did not care. He raised one arm above his head in a graceful curve while placing the other hand on his hip. He looked like a tiny actor performing in a very dramatic play. "Samantha," he announced. His voice filled the kitchen. "Be mine. I swear on everything I love, that was the most emotion I had heard in Xavier's voice since arriving at the house." I stared at him. "Be yours?" He held the pose. "I'm sorry. Am I hearing you correctly?" Xavier moved as if an invisible cape were blowing behind him. He stood tall and proud like a superhero. "Yes," he declared. I slowly placed my fork on the table. "Right." He waited. "Yeah, no." His smile disappeared. "No, no, no," I continued. "We are not doing this." Xavier suddenly lunged toward me. His lips were pushed forward, and a crazed look filled his eyes. I tried to move back, but he was too fast. He grabbed my face with both hands and began kissing me again and again. "Get off me, you little creep." I pushed him away. Actually, I did more than push him. I threw him across the kitchen. Xavier flew through the air, hit the floor, rolled twice, and immediately jumped back to his feet as if nothing had happened. Then he charged at me again. I extended one arm and caught him by the forehead before he reached me. His small arms swung wildly, but he could not move any closer. "Listen, champ," I said, holding him back. "I appreciate the breakfast, but this is not happening." Xavier clawed at my wrist with surprising strength. His fingernails dug into my skin. I pulled my hand away, causing him to fall face first onto the floor. "And that," I said, "is what happens to little boys who do not listen." Xavier sprang back up. This time, he did not attack me. He dusted off his suit, crossed his arms, and made an angry sound. "It doesn't matter anyway," he said. I froze. "My parents have your blood now, so you're already chosen." He stuck out his tongue. "How do you like them apples?" For a moment, I did not react. Then, the meaning of the situation hit me. Not the blood part, the talking part. "Xavier." He blinked. "That is the most I have ever heard you say." He continued staring. "Good for you, dude, seriously. Actually, good for me. I knew I was a great babysitter. You were a difficult little nut to crack, but I finally did it." Xavier's expression changed slightly. I pointed at myself. "This is a major personal victory." Then my brain caught up with the rest of his sentence. "Wait," Xavier smiled. "What did you say about your parents having my blood?" He covered his mouth and giggled. Then he placed both hands behind his back and rocked gently from side to side. "I dunno." "No." I stood up. "No, no, no, you do know. You just said they have my blood. What did you mean?" The warmth disappeared from his face. His eyes became dull and glassy. His mouth tightened. The excited little boy vanished, replaced by the cold, silent version I had known before. I snapped my fingers in front of his face. "Hello?" He did not react. I waved my hand. Earth to Xavier. "Come on, buddy, this is not a good time to return to your creepy statue routine." His head slowly turned toward me. The movement was so slow that I imagined I could hear his spine creaking. Then his mouth opened. A voice came out. It was not Xavier's voice. Sammy, I closed my eyes. You have got to be kidding me. You're going to marry my son, Sammy, the voice continued. You'll love him forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and the words repeated like a broken recording. The worst part was that Xavier's mouth was not moving. It simply hung open while the voice echoed from somewhere inside him. His body had become a speaker. Listen to me, Sammy, the voice said. I recognized it as Mr. Strickland. I'm going to tell you what you have been trying to force my son to explain. Pay attention. I stood in the kitchen, staring at Xavier. You see, Xavier is different, Mr. Strickland continued. I assume you have noticed that by now. Just a little. When we selected you for this job, it was not simply so you could babysit. The voice sounded almost amused. Did you honestly believe we would pay you this much money just to sit inside our mansion, to eat our food, to swim in the pool? I looked at the dead dove. This is the week before your wedding, sweetie, Mr. Strickland said. If I were you, I would be excited instead of whatever this is. I am ashamed to admit that I responded seriously to the possessed child acting as a supernatural walkie-talkie. So, just to be clear, I said, you understand how ridiculous that sounds, right? Xavier's eyes rolled toward me. Ridiculous? Mr. Strickland replied. No, sweetie, the word you are looking for is prosperous. I stared at him. Think of it, he continued. The kingdoms you and Xavier will rule, the millions of souls that will bow before you. You will become, in every sense of the word, the goddess of the universe. I rubbed my face. I cannot explain how melted my brain feels right now, Mr. Strickland. The voice remained silent. I may be trapped in a highly detailed dream caused by serious head trauma, I continued. But even if I am, why would I marry a 6-year-old? No answer. And why are you talking about him like he is the Antichrist? The kitchen became completely silent. I looked at Xavier. Xavier looked at me. The dead dove remained dead on the floor. Oh my God, I whispered. Mr. Strickland did not answer. I am babysitting the Antichrist. Honestly, Samantha, he said, what did you believe was happening? I don't know. I looked around the kitchen. I thought you were just extremely rich. Another silence followed. So, Mr. Strickland said slowly, you saw the drawings. Yes, you saw the nuns. Yes, you discovered that you could not escape the driveway. Yes, you watched the swimming pool literally turn into blood. I shifted uncomfortably. And you believe those were wealthy people activities? I pointed at Xavier. I thought most of that happened because of my serious head injury. But you attempted to leave before receiving the injury. That is not entirely true. It is completely true. Head dropped baby, I said. My mother had butterfingers. I have probably been injured since birth. There was another long and painful silence. Sammy, Mr. Strickland finally said, I'm going to let you go. Thank you. Remember, we are always checking in. I did not like the way he said that. And we love our baby boy very much, he continued. You had better treat him properly once the marriage is final. Actually, sir, Xavier's mouth slowly closed. His face returned to normal. He turned toward me and smiled. I told you, he said. That did not answer my question about the blood. Xavier sighed. He pointed to the back of his head in an exaggerated way. I stared at him. He pointed again. The back of the head. Blood. Then I remembered. The pool. Ding, 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 ding. Xavier shouted. My eyes widened. I rushed toward the glass door leading outside and tripped over the dead dove on the way. I caught myself against the wall, stepped around the bird, and looked out at the pool. It was empty, completely drained. There was not a single drop of water or blood inside it. I slowly turned back toward Xavier. He stood beside the table, watching me. I walked over and knelt in front of him. Xavier listened to me carefully. He smiled. I have tried very hard to be nice to you. His smile grew wider, possibly harder than I have ever tried to be nice to anyone in my entire life. He leaned forward. I need you to work with me now. You do not want me. His eyebrows rose. I have a strange medical condition, I said. It requires a large amount of lotion in several hard-to-reach places. Xavier continued listening. Places you are not prepared to reach at your age. He leaned forward and tried to kiss me again. His eyes stayed wide open. I shoved him backward. Nope. Then I ran. I sprinted down the hallway as quickly as I could. While running, I remembered something Mr. Strickland had told me on the first night. He had said I was not allowed inside the library. At the time, I had accepted the rule. Now, under the circumstances, I decided the rule could go directly to hell. There had to be a reason they wanted me to stay out. I reached the library door and grabbed the handle. Locked, I stepped back and kicked it. The door shook, but stayed closed. I kicked again. On the third attempt, the lock broke, and the door flew open. The library was as beautiful as I remembered. Tall shelves covered every wall. Warm lights glowed above the reading tables. The huge fish tank filled one side of the room, casting moving blue light across the floor. The peaceful atmosphere did not match my emotional state. I remembered Mr. Strickland saying something about the books. I rushed to the nearest shelf and began pulling them down. 1 book, 2 books, 5 books. I threw them onto the floor and searched behind them, expecting a hidden switch, a key, a message, or possibly a doorway to hell. My phone began vibrating inside my pocket. At first, it felt normal. I ignored it. The more books I removed, the harder the phone vibrated. It buzzed violently against my leg. The sensation became painful. The device grew hot. I gasped and slapped my thigh. The phone continued shaking so hard that I could feel it rubbing through the fabric of my clothes. Heat burned against my skin. I imagined blisters forming beneath it. I reached into my pocket, grabbed the phone, and threw it across the room. It struck the fish tank. I expected the glass to shatter. I expected thousands of gallons of water and fish to explode across the library floor. Instead, the entire tank went black. Not cracked, not empty. Black, like a television that had been switched off. I pointed at it. I knew it. My voice echoed through the library. I knew that thing was a television, you lying freaks. Something moved behind me. Before I could turn, a hood was pulled over my head. The room disappeared. I screamed and fought, but someone held my arms. I felt a sharp pressure against my neck. A needle, cold liquid, entered my body. My muscles weakened immediately. The sounds around me became distant. My knees gave way. Someone caught me before I hit the floor. Then everything went black. When I woke, my head felt heavy. My neck hurt where the needle had entered. I tried to move and discovered that my wrists were tied behind a chair. Rope also held my ankles and chest in place. The hood had been removed. I opened my eyes. Xavier stood in front of me. He wore a brand new tuxedo. It was black with a white shirt and a small bow tie. His hair had been combed neatly. He looked like a tiny groom waiting at the front of a church. 2 hooded figures stood beside him. Both wore long brown robes made from thick wool. Their faces were hidden in shadow, The figure on the right spoke. "Sammy," my stomach dropped. "Mr. Strickland?" The second figure moved slightly. "I'm here too, girl." I stared at them. "Meredith?" The two figures lowered their hoods. I wish I could tell you that I screamed because they had horns, claws, burning eyes, or some other obvious demon feature. I did not. I screamed because Mr. and Mrs. Strickland were enormous. And I mean enormous. I hate to sound rude. I truly do. I understand that everyone has different bodies, and I normally try not to judge. But if those two had applied to appear on My 600 LB Life, the producers would have turned them away for being about 300 pounds over the limit. They were massive beyond anything I had imagined. Their faces were buried beneath layers of flesh. Their robes stretched tightly around them. Their fingers looked small compared to the size of their hands. Mr. Strickland smiled at me. Mrs. Strickland smiled too. Xavier stood between them, looking happier than I had ever seen him. And that is where I will stop for tonight. I know what you are thinking. You are probably wondering what happened next. You are probably wondering why Xavier's parents looked like that, what the wedding involved, and whether I managed to escape. All of those are fair questions. But that is a story for tomorrow. Right now, I am still trying to understand how to continue. Telling this story has not fixed anything. It has not put my life back together. You are listening, and I appreciate that. But listening is not the same as saving me. So, until next time, I will leave you with this. Good evening. And if someone ever offers you an impossible amount of money to babysit a quiet child inside a mansion, do not accept. Especially if the fish tank looks like a television. Story 6. Father Thomas O'Callahan lived inside a prison built not for his body, but for his soul. The walls were not made of stone or iron. They were made of memories, guilt, and a past that never stopped scratching at the bars. Before he became a priest, before people called him Father, he was simply Thomas, a boy raised on a small farm outside the town of Blackwood. The land was rich and dark, but life there was hard. Winters were long, summers were wet, and every meal came from hours of painful work. Thomas grew up beneath the watch of a strict father and a silent mother. His family attended church every Sunday, prayed before every meal, and spoke often about sin. On the outside, Thomas appeared obedient. He memorized prayers faster than the other children and knew exactly when to lower his head or make the sign of the cross. But beneath that polite behavior, something cold lived inside him. Thomas enjoyed control. He liked making people afraid, especially when they did not understand that he was the cause of their fear. He never struck anyone where a bruise could be seen. He rarely shouted. Instead, he learned how to hurt people with rumors, secrets, and carefully chosen words. His favorite victim was Mary, the daughter of a neighboring farmer. Mary was quiet and gentle. She had dark hair, thoughtful eyes, and hands rough from working in the fields. She cared for injured birds and left pieces of bread along the fence for field mice. When other children laughed at her for wasting food, she only smiled and said that hunger felt the same to every living thing. Thomas hated her kindness. He did not understand it, and what he could not understand, he wanted to destroy. At first, he bothered her in small ways. He hid her tools when she worked. He loosened the lid on her milk jug so it spilled over her clothes. He took the bread she left for the mice and crushed it into the mud. Mary never accused him. That only made him more determined. Thomas began whispering lies to the other children. He told them Mary stole money from her grandmother. He said she spoke badly about them when they were not around. He claimed she had brought sickness to the village by feeding rats near the farms. The lies spread quickly. Children who had once walked home with Mary began avoiding her. Girls who had shared lunch with her stopped sitting nearby. Boys shouted cruel names when she passed. Thomas always stood at a distance, watching. He acted concerned when adults asked questions. He offered to pray for Mary and told people he hoped she would find peace. Inside, he felt a deep satisfaction. He did not want to injure Mary's body. That would have been too simple. He wanted to break her spirit slowly, piece by piece, while everyone else believed he was innocent. One Sunday, he placed a stolen silver coin in Mary's coat pocket before church. When the owner noticed the money missing, Thomas suggested that everyone should be searched. The coin was found. Mary begged them to believe her. No one did. Her father dragged her home in shame. The following week, she returned to church with a bruise along one cheek and her eyes lowered toward the floor. Thomas watched her from across the aisle. He felt no pity, only victory. Mary became quieter after that. She stopped leaving bread for the mice. She no longer waited by the school gate with the other children. Her shoulders remained bent as though she carried an invisible weight. Thomas continued. He wrote cruel notes and made them appear to come from Mary. He damaged a neighbor's garden and blamed her. He told the local boys that she had laughed when one of their fathers became ill. Each lie pushed her farther away from everyone. Mary tried to speak to the priest, but Thomas learned about it before she could. He told the priest that Mary often made up stories for attention. By the time she asked for help, the old man already doubted her. Her final humiliation came during the harvest festival. Thomas stole a small black rosary from Mary's room. It had belonged to her dying grandmother and was the most precious thing she owned. He broke the string, scattered most of the beads through the churchyard, and placed one bead inside the collection box. Then he accused Mary of stealing from the church. The entire village turned against her. Mary stood before them with tears running down her face, trying to explain that the bead was hers. No one listened. Thomas stood beside his mother, wearing his best clothes and a calm expression. That night, Mary walked to the creek behind the church. The following morning, her shoes were found beside the water. A half-eaten loaf of bread rested on the bank. Near it lay one black rosary bead. Her body was discovered downstream. The village mourned. Her father stopped speaking. Her mother became ill and died within the year. Thomas felt nothing. He stood at Mary's funeral while people cried around him. He lowered his head at the correct times and spoke softly about God's mercy. Inside, he felt the same satisfaction he had felt after every lie. He had destroyed her without ever striking her. To him, it was proof of power. Years later, Thomas joined the church. No one knew what he had done to Mary. People believed he had chosen a holy life because of deep faith. His mother told everyone that her son had always been close to God. The truth was simpler. Thomas discovered that the church gave him what he had always wanted. Control. People confessed their darkest secrets to him. They asked him how to live, whom to forgive, and what they should fear. He could fill their hearts with guilt using only a few words. He could turn families against one another while pretending to guide them towards salvation. When he became the priest of Blackwood, the town slowly became his kingdom.